Very warm welcome to all of our attendees this morning. We thank you very much for taking the time out. This morning we are talking about working with water. Now, I'm not too sure as a plumber if you'll ever have to work with water. Probably, maybe some days. I think it's going to be every day. Plumber's life is working with water. And so there's a few hazards that we just want to chat to you about this morning. In particular, some bacterial hazards that we just want to make you aware of. Legionnaires disease, it is a reality, and along with COVID, many of us are starting to understand a little bit more about how bacteria spreads. And just on that note, with the rise in COVID-19 illnesses and a lot of people becoming contacting or being exposed to COVID-19, we just want to ask, please, that each and every one of us take the initiative to ensure that we do not become complacent. No matter where you are, please wear your mask, practice social distancing, and adhere to the protocols of your company, as well as to the government when you are out in public. So let's get straight into our toolbox talk this morning on water. It's been called by many names: H2O, agua, Adam's ale. And as we said, plumbers, you are always working with water. Now, water has a variety of ways it can be used, but it also has a variety of risks that are associated with it. For one, water does conduct electricity, which can cause electric shock. Now, obviously, you're not going to get shocked from the water itself. There has to be a source of electrical exposure in the area, but a lot of us are working with power tools while working in plumbing. And so these power tools are obviously connected to extension cables or outlets. And when we are working on plumbing, when we are working on geysers, the potential to have water spill around us is a very big possibility. And especially now, if we are working with electricity, we want to be very careful. So a very big note is housekeeping. Housekeeping is absolutely essential. So please, all the plumbers out there, if you are working during this week, in fact, not just this week, for the foreseeable future, if anything does drip out or leak or get spilled, please just clean it up as soon as possible. In fact, try and clean it up immediately before continuing on with the work because of this type of risk that it creates for you and those around you. Now, obviously, because water has the potential to cause wet surfaces, it can also cause slipping hazards. So for many of us, we've seen it in shopping centers. No matter where you go, if somebody's cleaning the floor, they've got a little yellow hazard sign, and that is slippery when wet. We've even seen it on shirts, and we've seen it used in many different ways, but slippery when wet obviously just shows that when there is water or liquid on a surface, it creates a slipping hazard. And so this is another hazard that many plumbers need to look out for. While you are working, you have to wear your safety boots. Many have non-slip safety boots, but that doesn't always mean non-slip, depending on the amount of water or the actual area where you're working, the surface that you are working on. We've had non-slip shoes slip when cleaning out ponds. Many plumbers working on ponds in their clients' sites, and because of the algae that was built up onto the surface, the minute you step in, well, you would slip straight away. And that's not because the shoes are not good, but it was not correct for that environment. So please remember that the types of PPE that we are using, it does protect us, but it is also the last resort. We do not want our PPE to come into effect. That's like saying we can drive as fast as we want in a car because we have a safety belt and because we have an airbag. Well, that's not really the right type of thinking. We have that as an insurance, if we can put it that way. We do not want to get into a car accident, but should there be an accident, we want that type of equipment to come into effect and potentially save our lives. But we want to practice safe driving techniques, driving slower in rainy conditions. We want to ensure that we also obey the road rules around us so that the safety belt and the airbag are not used every single day. And so this is the same with our PPE. We do not want our PPE to go to work every single day, protecting us from the risks and hazards around us. We want to be proactive. We want to have other measures of safety. We want to measure our risk and ensure that we are not being exposed to these types of hazards. Now, hot water can obviously cause scalding, severe burns on skin, that's especially when working with hydroboils and geysers. Guys, please, we encourage you to, if you're working on these things, if you're taking them out, or if you're ensuring that you need to put it in and then check if it is working, just be careful of the potential of hot water. Hot water also creates steam, and this can also cause burns. Water can also contain bacteria causing disease, and that's what we want to chat to you a little bit more about today. And then lastly, a large body of water can cause drowning. Now, you might think, well, where's the potential for me to drown in the plumbing industry? It might be a very small area, but many are doing water reticulation, water harvesting. And so we are using these massive tanks in order to save water or pump water back into a premises in order to save water. And this harvesting of the water that we are doing as well is also going into these massive tanks. Now, these tanks obviously need to be cleaned, and with all the filters that go into it annually or biannually, or sometimes every 2 to 3 years, depending on the actual maintenance project, we want to ensure that these tanks remain cleaned. Now, you're not going to hop into a tank that is filled with water, but some plumbers have decided to just hop in and check just to see what's happening. And while there's the potential for drowning as well. So please keep this in mind. There's obviously a lot more risks and hazards that are associated with being a plumber, water being one of them, and also having a lot more types of risks that are associated with just water. But as we mentioned, we want to chat to you about Legionnaires disease. Now, Legionella bacteria is basically found naturally in water. So it's natural. It's a natural bacteria that is in water and soil all over the world. They're in very low numbers, but we've started to see a rise, an increase in Legionnaires disease coming from the Legionnaires bacteria. Now, the genus of Legionella is a pathogenic group of gram-negative bacteria. Gram-negative bacteria is also found all over the world. E. coli is a type of gram-negative bacteria. But this specific Legionella contains a specific species of pneumophila, which is causing Legionnaires disease. It also causes a mild flu-like illness called Pontiac fever. Now, why are we seeing a rise, and why is it necessary for us to discuss this today? Well, last year, at around the same time, we had a 4-part series on Legionnaires disease, what it is, how it spreads, how it can be prevented, and what can we do to stop this type of danger occurring. Well, it's because during the winter times, a lot of people start looking a lot more for hot water. I know during the summer times when it's super hot, we don't generally have as hot showers as we normally do. If you're not like me, maybe you are having hot showers. But generally speaking, we try and increase the heat, which obviously is now going to have an impact on what breeds in the water. And we'll explain to you how this actually works. Why does this actually occur? And why are people now starting to contract Legionnaires disease or Pontiac fever quite often? Because it's a mild flu-like illness, Pontiac fever is often just brushed off as the normal flu, changing of the season. When our children get it, we view it as the same thing. But most are not actually understanding where this Legionnaires disease or Pontiac fever is coming from. And so we just want to raise this awareness once again of the Legionella bacteria and how it spreads and how it enters into a person's body. Now, the spreading of this type of bacteria, obviously coming through water, starts feeding off any scale or rust, sediment, sludge, algae, or organic matter that is in and around any damp area. Now, Legionnaires disease is contracted by inhalation of water droplets containing Legionella. Now, you might think, well, when we inhale, how do you inhale water? I mean, is that even possible? Can you inhale water droplets? Well, let's explain exactly how this works. Bacteria is caught in the water, and then it's released into the air, as water is aspirated. So this comes into the form of a little bit of steam, sometimes very tiny, we call them microns, so between 200 and 500 microns. This is where water starts aspirating, and then we inhale it. Now, our lungs, and we will show you a little bit more of the technical side in a minute, our lungs obviously have these parts on our lung that has to get rid of dust. I mean, we try and get rid of dust as much as possible in the body so that we do not clog it up. We only want to take in oxygen as much as possible. So these little water droplets then sit on the lung and they contain this bacteria. And what happens is, as the bacteria gets a little bit stronger, it then attacks the lung and it enters into the actual lung itself. And this is where we start getting mild flu-like symptoms, or potentially the very dangerous type of disease, which is Legionnaires disease. Now, all of this is happening constantly in showers. If you think about it, hot water, you open the shower, you hop into the shower, there's a little bit of steam. We are inhaling that all the time. At some pools, because the water is constantly in motion, with this constant motion in pools or spas or even water springs, jacuzzis, water features, taps, steam rooms, all of these have water in motion or water that is being aspirated. So all of these areas have the potential to create an environment where the Legionella bacteria can thrive and also expose humans to this type of disease. But it only thrives in conditions between 20 and 45 degrees Celsius. So if the water is between 20 and 45 degrees Celsius, that is when it is the most optimal condition for this type of bacteria to thrive. Now, you might think to yourself, well, when we're setting up geysers for a lot of people, we're actually turning the temperature down because they don't need to add in cold water. You see, the geyser itself can be limited. It can be changed. You can increase the heat. You can decrease the heat. And many people say, well, we don't want scalding hot water. There's no point in that. We just have to add cold water in any case. So why not drop the temperature of the actual geyser to a more comfortable temperature? Well, when doing that, please remember that if you get to that 20 to 45 degrees Celsius, that is where you are going to have optimal conditions for this bacteria to start growing. And as it grows and it comes out the showers or the taps, this is where the bacteria now is going to start attaching itself to the human lung system. And this is where diseases are going to occur. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to ensure that our geysers are set at a higher rate, so between 50 and 60 degrees Celsius, so that that heat destroys any bacteria that has the potential to expose us to this disease. And this is the reason why a lot of geysers are at a high temperature. So this is something that you do need to explain to your clients when installing geysers, when installing hydroboils. We want to get it to that temperature where it actually kills off the bacteria, and always keep it clean. So showers where there's mildew needs to be cleaned regularly. Obviously in geyser rooms or boiler rooms where there's a potential to have little water spills or leaks here and there, ensure that you go and detect where that leak is coming from. Fix those leaks. If you are not a plumber and you are listening in today for the first time, first of all, welcome. Perhaps you do need a plumber. For one, use an approved plumber, someone who knows what they are doing and will also give you the best advice on the type of plumbing that you are installing. And if you have a leak, please don't try and fix it yourself. Get a professional out there, because not only are we going to stop leaks that cause slipping and tripping, we're not going to have a waste of natural resources, water that is very vital for the life here on Earth, but also we are going to stop the potential for these areas of water buildup that create moist environments for bacteria to thrive. So let's see exactly how it works. The lungs have little sacs, tiny little sacs that are attached onto it. You can see this in the top right-hand corner. These alveoli are attached to the tiny little particles of membrane basically that attaches to our lungs. Now, these are extremely small. These are tiny, tiny, tiny. They're about 200 to 500 microns each. Now, 1 micron is a millionth of a millimeter. Sorry. So a millionth of a meter is what a micron is. And an alveoli is between 200 and 500 microns. So it's extremely tiny. They're responsible for removing dust from the actual lungs. Now, a human body has approximately, and this is just approximate because it ranges between 300 and 800 million alveoli at any given time. So if you had to take that and stretch it out, it would fill an entire tennis court. All right. So it's quite a very large section, between 50 and 75 square meters of space that this actually takes up. And you think to yourself, well, how does that fit into the human chest? Well, it's an absolutely amazing feat of creation that we see how alveoli has the potential to remove these tiny little particles from our lungs in order to give us fresh air all the time. But what happens, as you can see there on the bottom in the center of the screen, bacteria, and in particular, we are talking about Legionnaires disease at the moment, or Legionella bacteria. And this is obviously the same with most bacteria, but in particular, Legionella bacteria gets aspirated in the water. We inhale it. It then lands on these alveoli, and that is responsible for then removing it from our body. So taking it out of our body so that it doesn't infect us. But the problem is this bacteria is very clever. So it creates a protective sac around it. And this little sac around it attaches itself to the actual lung, attaches it to the alveoli, and the alveoli, which has obviously these capillaries of blood cells to try and attack the bacteria and remove it out, cannot penetrate this protective sac that it has created. And while it is in this protection, it now starts to multiply. It starts to increase in size. And as it's multiplying, it's starting to get stronger. And as it gets stronger, it's starting to say to itself, well, now I have the potential to attack the alveoli. Sorry, these technical terms sometimes. I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to get tongue twisted every now and then. But this bacteria then multiplies. It attacks those little sacs that are on our lungs. It then bursts open and enters into the bloodstream. And as it enters in, it starts obviously going and attacking the lungs. And this is where those mild flu-like symptoms come with Pontiac's disease or Pontiac's fever. But there is the high potential that it could become the Legionnaires disease. Now, Legionnaires disease is a very dangerous disease. It has the potential to be fatal. Most antibiotic treatments is usually effective in treating Legionnaires disease, and around 90% of people with this condition do make a full recovery. Sounds very similar to another type of virus going around, doesn't it? However, while you may start to feel better, it's normally going to take a few weeks before you are completely back to normal. But 10% of people who contract Legionnaires disease unfortunately succumb to it because your entire immune system is lowered, and that has the potential for increasing other bacteria or other types of illnesses into the body. And so with COVID, and obviously many of us are concerned from a day-to-day perspective on contracting COVID, all these other bacteria out there that we do not want to lower our guard against either. And we also do not want to expose our clients to this type of disease. So what do we want to do? We want to ask you, when last did you inspect your water temperatures, the cleanliness of the source of where you're getting your water, the cleanliness of the plumbing, the end point, so the taps and the shower heads, all of those things? When last have you actually checked and then cleaned these? Do you do your shower head disinfections where a lot of lime and scale start building up? Are you doing monthly inspections at companies? Yes, at your home. It's not a legal requirement, but it is a very good thing to do at your own home. Perhaps get a professional plumber out to come and take a look at your water temperatures. Come and take a look at the cleanliness of the piping that goes from the municipal side into your plumbing and then out of your shower, out of your taps. Protect yourself, protect your families and your kids. When we're talking about businesses, obviously we do not want to neglect maintenance on our plumbing. Water can destroy a lot of things, and there's a lot inside water that can go wrong. So constant maintenance is required in order to have fresh, clean running water at all times. So we want to ensure that you do your own monthly, quarterly, or annual inspections, as well as clean outs. We do not want sediment or scale to start building up to the point where it becomes threatening to our lives. And then also the temperatures, please ensure that you are not between that 20 and 45 degrees Celsius range. This is really where the Legionnaires disease is going to thrive. We want to increase that temperature. Let's get it to the 55 to 60 degree mark where it can die. And you'll see there that it will die within 5 to 6 hours if you have it at 55 degrees Celsius. So if you're switching your geyser on and off during the day and it is not reaching its proper potential, also if you're switching it on and it's 55 degrees and you're only leaving it on for 3 hours, is it reaching the actual temperature? We'll find this out from a qualified plumber. Now, since it is a naturally occurring bacteria, we need to ensure we have a full Legionella plan in place to prevent the growth, the spread, and the contamination of this bacteria. So please remember something going forward. A lot can be stopped just by good habits. Housekeeping habits are extremely important, especially as plumbers out in the industry. We don't just want to arrive onto a site that is dirty. Nobody wants to work in a dirty or an untidy environment. But no client wants to see their environment dirty or untidy when their plumbing contractor leaves either. So please, a clean workplace is a safer workplace. Make sure that you immediately clean up those spills to prevent these types of risks and hazards from happening. So there's always a place for everything that you have, and everything should be in its place. That is the motto of housekeeping. And please remember, clean as you go. This is not a single person's responsibility. This is everyone's responsibility. And we need to take that responsibility seriously so that we do not hinder or expose ourselves or others to this type of danger. So thanks very much for joining us this morning. We really do appreciate it.